Today, we're sitting down with Andrew Mazotti, entrepreneur, real estate developer, and the founder of Napa Valley's first premier exotic car experience. Andrew has built a dynamic career learning the art of investing from his family. In this episode, he shares his journey, the lessons that shaped him, and what it takes to turn a passion into an opportunity. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, we're here back with another episode. As you guys can see in the background, it's not green screen. We're here live and direct at Napa Valley Car Club. I have a very special guest today. I'll let him introduce himself and we're going to get into what he did, what he does, and kind of what the future has in store. Andrew, please.
Andrew Mazotti. I own Napa Valley Car Club along with my business partners and was formerly a real estate developer here in Napa. Did a lot of the development in downtown Napa that you see today with the shops, the Archer Hotel and all the restaurants, everything there. Still active in real estate investing and everything, but the development market sort of turned down. I stopped developing and decided to pursue this passion of this business with the Napa Valley Car Club, the cars, the barn, the membership, the event space, the experiences, everything like that.
So we're going to get into unpack that and like all those different businesses that you're a part of. But I guess first and foremost, just tell us a little bit about who you are and like where you're from and kind of what your background is.
I was born in San Francisco and moved up here, did have my childhood in San Francisco and then second half up here in Napa. So I'm a Napa kid, basically. I grew up here, went off, did different sorts of things, went to college, went to grad school, lived in different cities, and then made my way back here, saw opportunity. I love Napa. And I wanted to make meaningful change somewhere that I cared about. And so that was what actually really drew me back to starting my career here in Napa.
When you say change, like in what way?
In a positive way, hopefully,
Okay.
right? But like basically, as I went into real estate development, I wanted to help shape downtown Napa, help shape the valley. Then I ended up on the planning commission for the county. Doing that, and then with Napa Valley Car Club, kind of creating a new type of experience that is different, is fun. The thing that I have always realized is that change is inevitable. Change is constantly happening. There's nothing you can do about that. And so if you can plan for it and have the right people in place, make smart decisions, you can plan for good change. And if you don't, then it'll be bad change. Yeah. So I knew Napa was changing no matter what. So I said, well, I want a seat at the table now.
Yeah, with or without you.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen no matter what. Yeah.
In your early career, how did you get into like real estate development? Like what was your role within the company you worked at, or did you immediately like start your own business? So I grew up in the industry. My stepfather was a real estate developer. And so, at a young age, like 5 years old, I was exposed to it. I learned about it. I watched him grow his career, the things he did. We traveled. I saw projects through his lens he was looking at. So I always had, some sort of interest in real estate development. I went to grad school. I studied real estate development. So I went to Columbia and I was living in Manhattan, which is kind of the mecca of real estate development. So I did that and I got introduced locally to a guy named Todd Zapolsky who had done projects around the country, but had started to focus in on Napa. And so when we got introduced, we hit it off. It was serendipitous of the timing of me coming out of grad school and then him looking to kind of basically redevelop and revitalize downtown Napa. Just worked out. That was, over a decade ago, and we just took off from there. And at one time, we were a firm, Zapolsky Real Estate was the largest private landowner in downtown Napa. Absolutely. So we really went for it. Yeah. Talking about how you guys were able to scale the business, like was that a lot that you guys learned? Well, obviously he had the experience. Yeah. Was he your mentor more in like learning how to navigate?
No, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I learned a ton I essentially built my professional career there doing the things that we did. The timing of it was actually coming out of the Great Recession.
Okay.
So there was a lot to learn. And I've now been fortunate to I started doing my first real estate investing when I was 21. So that was right as the market crashed, and then kind of built my career as it was coming up. And then experience another crash in COVID, and then what we've done now. So I've sort of had the experience of a little bit of maybe 3 cycles, which was really helpful. But no, working, with Todd and taking a leadership role in that company at a very young age for what I was doing was huge. And it was just, again, the opportunity presented itself. He gave me that opportunity, and then I seized it, and we did well.
And then how were you, like, as a young guy going into these rooms, I'm sure doing multi-million-dollar deals, how did you know how to carry yourself, or how did you know, like, how to have people take you seriously at, like, at such a young age?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So in some cases they didn't take me seriously, right? You know, there's a little bit of dressing the part. Having, in life, we have these sort of qualifiers, right? So having an Ivy League degree can help a bit with, you know, the
getting a respect, the stamp.
Just a little bit of that kind of thing. And then, but I think having somebody like Todd in these meetings advocate and show the respect and say, you know, putting me forward is helpful. And then my stepfather's company was pretty well known.
Okay.
So that was another thing that kind of put the guard down, and people would let me speak or listen to what I had to say. Some of those cases they could find out that I maybe knew what I was talking about. Those things definitely helped for sure.
Yeah.
But there were cases where I remember showing up to maybe some meeting in a, you know, Vegas or New York or whatever, and Todd look at me and say, "You're dressed too casual." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I got a call. He's like, "You don't understand. You're 28 years old.
Yeah.
You have to overdress for these people, otherwise they're not going to take you seriously." So presenting yourself was important.
As a professional, like, how did you really develop all those things that you needed to know, what to say, what to wear?
Right.
Was that just through experience, like, in that business?
Yeah. Watching other people.
Okay.
You do a lot of watching and a lot of just observing in your early years. As much as I watched things that people did well that I could copy, I also was very aware of things that people did wrong that I would avoid. And so I was just very observant. One thing that I definitely learned through a lot of people in my life, but, you know, working with, you know, Zapolsky Real Estate during these years, was nothing replaces showing up. And I just showed up every day, showed up to conferences, showed up to meetings, and nothing could replace showing up and just being present. Even though sometimes it was very easy to want to just say, I'm not doing this, you know, but it helped me in the long run.
So then, as you guys are looking for projects or places to develop, what is your guys' system for saying this is a good idea or that's not a good idea?
Economics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I can pretty quickly, with some basic math, tell you if something's viable or not. But I would say at a macro level is, what are the drivers in that market? What is going on politically? Is it stable? Is it unstable? Is it reliable? We look for reliability as real estate developers because we're taking so much risk. Understanding, if you're going to develop, there has to be economic drivers that make it viable, right? So you have to really understand, what are those drivers? If you look at a city where there's 3 leading companies that are located there or have relocated there, and they have huge growth plans, and they're in a sector like AI or something that you think is growth, then you can feel pretty safe looking at the macro and saying, this place is going to grow, so what we're doing can be supported. As opposed to looking at somewhere where there is no growth story, there's no reason, people aren't moving there, there's no business booming or anything like that. You can say this is maybe not a good place to be. So it depends on how granular you want to get, because you'll find opportunities in all markets. But in general, that's sort of what you look for. And then the underlying economics, and you balance that potential upside against what is the risk and how much work is it going to take, and then you have to make a business decision, essentially.
Okay, and then you guys are looking at projects all over the country then, it sounds like, not specifically California, Bay Area? Or?
Well, so you know, when I was formerly with Zapolsky Real Estate, we would never not look at an opportunity, but we were mostly focused on North Carolina and the Triangle, where Duke University and UNC and everything, and that's a huge growth market. And then the Bay Area, and very specifically Napa. Now, as I'm doing it just on my own or with, you know, partners that I work with in the area to invest, we're really focused on our market here because we can control it. We understand it. We're local. It makes a lot of sense. If I were to get back into real estate development and try to grow a business there, you know, I would probably be looking probably out of state, some of those growth markets. But I didn't do a lot of deals in a lot of different states.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that more because you can't have eyes on what things are going on? It's just a lot of, I guess, depending on people, right? Hoping everyone's going to be doing their job.
Right. Yeah. You have to be able to manage the people. Yeah. You have to be able to see the property and see what's going on. And then if you're developing, you need to know politics. Yeah. So you have to have relationships with governments, and you can only have so many. So many meaningful relationships and certain levels of trust and teams in these areas. Real estate development has morphed from something that was very entrepreneurial to something where it's mostly now reserved for large organizations with a lot of money and a lot of patience and a lot of resources, because it's just, that's what it takes to build now.
All right. And then as you guys are choosing like what to develop in certain areas, are you guys looking more at the numbers, or is there involvement with like local government on what the community wants? Or you guys try to find like a middle ground of that?
Middle ground for sure. I mean, you can't force a project down a community's throat. It just doesn't work that way. And you don't want to. I mean, for a number of reasons, whether it's morally or financially, it's just not really going to work out well. So you do want to identify what are the needs of the community, what are the wants of the community, what are the wants of the local government and everything, and then try to either pitch them on a new idea, but if they're not receptive, it's not going to work. Yeah, I mean, that's basically how you would approach any sort of development in a market. For example, we would never try to convince Napa to build a football stadium. You know what I mean? Like, and try to bring a pro sports team here. It's never going to happen. It's not going to work. So,
Yeah, so you guys just try to approach it in like in a way that makes sense, I guess.
The way that makes sense.
Culturally of like the city or the area, right?
Correct.
So when do you guys decide that something is a good fit? Does it really just have to be with the numbers and that you guys checked in, I don't know if I want to say politically, with people and local people in government that gave you like the checks, and then is that when you decide to move forward with things?
So the way it works is and when I say we, maybe me and these partners, or me and these other partners, whatever, because I don't have a firm and I'm just an individual now that does things with different groups. And you come up with what you think is a good idea and a good viable project. And you essentially propose or present to the community. So that's your members of the community and the local governments. Then you'll receive feedback, and you'll know whether there's something there or not. And if you receive some positive feedback, there's always going to be change. There's always going to be tweaks. There's always going to be refinement and everything. So you go through that process, and then you typically, you either get approved or denied by the government. And if you're approved, then you would take the necessary steps to start funding it and going through the actual process. If you're denied, you're denied, right? Yeah. There is a very heavy vetting process that goes on typically. There are markets that do just say, by right, you can do X, Y, Z, but you still usually have to present design. You know, you're not going to do like a massive pink tower if they don't, it doesn't fit the market. So there are a lot of key steps, and in some cases you will say this doesn't, the writing's on the wall, we're done, or we're going to pivot to something else, or we're going to completely bail. You go through that process pretty extensively, and in some cases it can take a very long time, like years, which is brutal, but sometimes it's just what's necessary.
And then, like, during those years, are you guys actively working on other things, like to try to? Okay, you're not just
always looking at multiple things. You got a lot of irons in the fire because they're not all going to work out.
Yeah. And then, what's like considered a good success rate? Like, you guys walk into those meetings knowing that this could easily not work.
Yeah.
So, like, if you had to ballpark, I guess, out of my curiosity and maybe a viewer's curiosity, how many projects actually go through you guys developing, getting people in to do whatever they need to do to land, and kind of putting it all together?
It depends what market you're in. Speaking locally to the Napa market, there are a lot of ideas that fall apart in the conversation stages. And then there are a lot of ideas that get past the conversation stage that fall apart for, whatever reason, sort of, as you're getting towards the 20-yard line or something like that. In Napa, if you walk around just downtown where we are, I could walk around and point to a lot of approved projects that have never come out of the ground.
Mm.
So if you sit where we are right now, there's a project across the street that's approved, nothing's happening.
Mm.
There's a project over here that's being proposed, but it's just being proposed. There is a project approved 1 block away. These are, years ago, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
You go down First Street to First and Silverado right there. That project was approved in like 2007, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's ever happened. You walk 2 blocks to First and Main, approved project, nothing's happening. So it's almost like when the government approves a project, there is such a long way to go until that project is actually seen. And when we started First Street Napa, which was over 10 years ago, there were a dozen projects that were being built, right? So we were one of like a dozen. I believe we are the only one of those proposed or approved projects that actually came out of the ground.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it was a number of very specific factors that allowed our project to come out of the ground. Really having the right partners. But if you did it in a more traditional way, they never would have happened.
Okay.
Or it would have fallen apart. People think, oh, when it's approved, it's going to happen. It's not. It's actually very rare that large-scale development projects in communities like Napa actually happen. Like most of them don't come to fruition,
Mm-hmm.
or at least in my career, they haven't. A while ago, they may have, but not recently.
And then when you say your partners, like that your partners helped everything actually come to life, is that financial partner? Is that designer?
Both.
Like
operating partner. So the Archer Hotel, we didn't build the Archer Hotel.
Uh-huh.
We entitled for the hotel, and then we sold it to a company, LodgeWorks, who builds hotels, and they built it. They were a great partner. They had their own capital. They had a lot of reasons that they were able to actually bring a hotel out of the ground in 2014, which
Mm-hmm.
many groups couldn't do.
Yeah.
So having them. We also, on the First Street Napa, we have a large capital partner we have multiple partners, but one significant partner that had very patient capital and stuck with us along the way and really made that project happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having those two components were very important.
For other companies that couldn't make it happen, is it just that you would say the like old school way of doing business just wasn't allowing it to come to life?
Yes. I mean, if you had more traditional capital, they would say in a lot of cases, and we ran into this too with other projects, is the economics are not robust enough for everyone to get paid.
Yeah.
The risk is here and the returns are here. We need the returns to be here, or we need the risk to be here.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, we're off. Now, if you look at in capital markets, typically when you have a project and you're trying to finance it, you have equity investors and you have bank debt, right? And they're in 2 different tranches of the capital stack. And when the world is on its side, to get that money is very difficult. Like banks will just stop lending on development project for a period of time, and then they'll be go, and then they'll stop.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of time it right as well. The stars have to align, basically.
Yeah.
They don't always align. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the time they don't.
There's a lot that goes into it.
You've kind of touched upon this already, but like what are some of the projects that you've worked on? You said like Ondas and like First Street Napa.
Archer,
Archer.
Yeah. In the Zapolska Real Estate Group, we had the First Street Napa shops and offices where the Archer Hotel is, the Gordon Building where Anthropology is, and then the whole Kohl's department store site. So there was a time where we owned all of that. We ended up putting together a pretty good plan for the Kohl's redevelopment, and we ultimately ended up selling it to another real estate development group that is now pursuing not the same exact project, but a similar project in nature. We decided to exit that. We still, I still own part of First Street Napa, but I'm not involved in the development anymore. Todd and Zapolska Real Estate run that project. So that still exists and is not quite complete yet, but they're still working on completion. And so we had that here. We looked at some other projects in Napa, but we really had our hands full there. But back east, we owned shopping centers, Whole Foods anchored shopping centers, grocery anchored shopping centers, some office buildings, different, mostly retail focused. Yeah. Which is a tough place now because retail has changed so much. But that was the history of the company, had a lot of experience in retail. It's more fun and interesting than multifamily or office. But it got particularly challenging when Amazon and e-commerce like really took off in 2016. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I asked you. Was that what made it more difficult?
Yeah, on First Street Napa, you had COVID, you had an earthquake. There were a lot of hurdles and challenges that we hit, but I would say the biggest one was what they called the retail apocalypse, which was in-store sales in America plummeted and people started buying online. I don't know, like, where do you buy your toothpaste?
eBay. I buy everything on eBay because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And like, what would compel somebody to go to the store when they can be on their phone and they can get products in some cases same day, or next day, or 2 days? And with clothing, like if you buy from a Nordstrom or whatever, I'll order 10 different things, try them on, and then put them in a box and ship them back. As opposed to driving to the store, walking around, trying to figure it out. It's going to burn all this time. So the value proposition of going to retail like got pretty damaged. So then there was a shift to, okay, it has to be experiential. It has to be lifestyle. There has to be more than just retail. The challenge with that is, one, it only works in specific places. Two, it's very expensive. And retail is still sort of morphing and changing, and change comes with cost typically. And that hurts economics. So if I could go back before and see that sort of retail apocalypse was happening, don't know that I would do it again.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that it is a absolute monster to get over.
I guess me speaking for myself, but realistically, it's the future. Retail, there can be a lot of different ways that you try to make it more appealing, but at the end of the day, people love convenience.
People love convenience. People are busy. They're either busy or they're lazy. Either way, you're talking about stuff getting to your door immediately, trying it on the comfort of your own home and thinking on it and shipping it back. I mean, going to a store I just did it in Hawaii, and I remember thinking, like, this is not enjoyable. Like, this is work. It's too hectic. There's too much stuff.
You have to wait in line.
The whole thing. I was like, this is not an enjoyable experience. And that was at one of the largest, most successful malls in America, at Ala Moana. And I don't have high hopes for the future of retail.
Where do you see like the trend going towards, or like what in your mind are you bullish on? To, like, what type of projects or what type of things?
Housing. To do real estate projects, investing, there has to be some backup, as like some demand, right? So one thing to speak to Napa, because we're here, is the demand to live in Napa and the demand for housing far outpaces the ability to deliver housing, right? So, I have an apartment portfolio. That portfolio does very well because if somebody moves out, I've got
people
a list of, ready to go in. And you can continue. There's rent growth baked into the market. There's a lot of these things. And so there is this just massive housing demand that is there. The same demand does not exist for office. People are officing all over the place. They're remote. They're working from home. There's just like a lot of things going on there. Retail, we talked about, there's a lot of differences. Industrial got overbuilt. Everyone anticipated e-commerce. Then they went really big on it. And then they basically overbuilt. So that will correct. But I think long term, it'll probably correct. And then it'll continue to grow. I know office buildings a lot of people are looking at conversions of office building into housing because there is a need for housing. That's where I can feel comfortable and say, long term, this is good. And, do the way people live change? Maybe a little bit, but not dramatically. Not like we saw the way people are working and shopping. Those are seismic shifts. I think that the housing, that's where I would go. But again, it is market specific. There are markets that got overbuilt. There are markets that have oversupply. So you got to make sure that you're in the right market. Data centers, I don't know much about data centers, but just philosophically, as AI booms and tech just continues to take over the world, essentially, data centers will be in need. They are a specific need. And so I would think that would grow long term as well. Yeah. But in general, I would go housing.
Working with cities, counties, and local government, we kind of talked about this earlier, but like how many hurdles do you guys have to jump to really get like project off the ground?
I mean, a lot. I wouldn't say hurdles like necessarily silly hurdles and hoops and things. I mean, it's just
the way the system is.
It's the way the system is. And it was, these checks and balances were designed because people don't want, detriment to the environment. They don't want to be overbuilt, because once you build and create a city a certain way, I mean, there's not really any going back.
It's hard to go back.
It's hard to go back. So it's easier to just kind of slow play it and take it in steps. As people who live here in local communities and everything like that, we are protective of our cities. The way to do that, the way to avoid corruption, the way to avoid,
monopoly,
just a lot of things. There's a lot of systems that get put in place. Are there too many now? I think so. There's some balance, I think, that makes sense. I think that it probably wasn't enough, and then we went too far.
Yeah.
And so if we can come back in the middle, but you have to go through some sort of process, unfortunately. You can do by right, which is if you meet these standards and check these boxes, there is a level of reliability. But even so, there's always a little bit of, I mean, if a city doesn't want a project, they don't want a project.
Yeah.
If the community doesn't want a project, they don't want a project. So you're always running that risk.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, in smaller communities, people will say, we don't care about the person, we care about the project. The entitlement runs with the land. It's not about that. It's about, but I can tell you, who you are and who is behind the project always matters. It's always factored in. It's like when people say, it's not business, it's personal. It's like, nah, everything's personal. What I mean, kind of thing. Like there is always an element of, are you going to be a good steward of this and part of this community? Or are you just looking to make a quick buck and get in and out? And then the people are in smaller communities are not into that whole idea.
Yeah.
They want to feel like if they're approving a project, that they are going to be responsible and good stewards of that project. For sure. So that plays a big factor, no matter people tell you or not, it for sure does.
Okay. And then what's the perfect middle ground and counterbalance of that? I mean, people aren't developing for fun, right? Like everyone is trying to make money.
Right.
So how do you, I don't want to call it a game, but it almost feels like a game.
It's a negotiation.
The negotiation.
It's a negotiation. It's okay. Here's what we're going to get. We're going to have a good project and we're trying to make money.
Yeah.
What do you want? And that's how it always goes.
Okay.
So a local government may say, okay, you're going to build this project. What does the city get? What does the community get out of this? They may say, you're going to make all this money. What are we getting? Okay. We're going to build an open space park for the public. We're going to do 30% affordable housing. We're going to pay into the affordable housing fund that you guys can go do something with. We're going to create this much revenue for the city and tax revenue. There's always a negotiation because the local governments are a business still. Yeah. Like they have to be viable. It's just the way it works. So there's always a negotiation of give and take of what does the community get out of this project. So a lot of people are averse to hotels, right?
Yeah.
And they say, well,
especially
here, right? And so they say, we don't want more hotels. It's not for this community. It's not for us. It's for tourists, right? So you got to break it down and say, well, this hotel creates this much TOT revenue, tax revenue, right? Transit occupancy tax. So that revenue can be used to improve roads. It can be used for parks. It can be used for community funds. Now, is it or not? I can't tell you. Cities do what they do with their money, but that is in theory how there's a give back to a community. When the Archer Hotel was built, I would go up on the rooftop and I saw members of the community enjoying it. There was a community aspect. Now, if that was private, not open to the public, I could see how there would be a problem.
Yeah.
But so there is some of that. There are benefits to community. And then if you own businesses here, they're bringing in people who are looking to patronize your businesses, but that's probably a small percentage of the community that actually owns businesses that benefit from maybe another hotel coming in or something like that. So it is always a what do we get, always on both sides, a negotiation and a give and take.
Okay. That's really interesting. And I guess that's where it becomes even more negotiation, because if they ask you for something it's like, okay, we can't do that, but how do we keep them happy to like keep this going?
At the end of the day, a local government, they're looking out for their community.
Yeah.
And so they have to say, how is this a positive? Because if it's a negative or a neutral, what's the point? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's got to be a positive to the community. So you have to convey that. And in some cases, you have to give up some things to make sure that it is more of a positive for a community.
I think we're getting a little spicy. What about like some horror stories of projects you guys were trying to just get off the ground or make happen, and no matter what you did or said, it was no, so much pushback?
You know, I don't think we ever got to that, because we're always smart enough to know what had some viability and what didn't. So I would say we never got into a situation where it was an absolute just like, get out of here. I will say that there was a shift in political views in the city of Napa that caused us to rethink how much we wanted to invest and develop in Napa. And that took place over the course of several years. And it's not whether city council's right or wrong. I think it takes a long time to determine if things are right or wrong. And then it's also sometimes a matter of opinion of just what you want. So I wouldn't say that anybody did anything right or wrong, but I would say that there was a shift that made development riskier, more difficult, and not as viable, and caused us to basically decide that we were not going to pursue more projects here. And that was unfortunate, you know, just for us and what we were doing. Mm-hmm. But, you know, times changed at that point. I wouldn't say that we ever had horror stories because we never put ourselves in that position.
Okay.
You know, if I went in and proposed something absolutely ridiculous, like I knew it was ridiculous, I knew it was never going to get approved. You know, we definitely had some transactional horror stories where, you know, we were in contract for a deal, and then, you know, the deal got sabotaged by the seller because he didn't want to sell because his partners were forcing him to sell. And then we tried to get back into contract, but he went into contract with someone else. And then there was a divorce happening. There was, you know, other scandalous things happening. There was maybe some illegal things happening. We watch all this unfold. Ultimately, the whole thing falls apart and we don't end up buying the property. So there were some transactional, maybe horror stories that have happened, but nothing on like the development proposal side. Mm-hmm. When Archer was being built, there were crazy rains that came in and got into all the drywall because they couldn't seal it up. They had to rip it all out, redo it. Yeah. You know, there were some things like that happened. Our project lit on fire by an arsonist once. We had bats in a project back, you know, like random things like that. Yeah. We had a 9-month pregnant woman get trapped in an elevator in one of our projects. Christ. So like we get some of that, and I believe we had a project with contained asbestos in the roof where the bats were getting. So they were like bats getting in and out with asbestos, like asbestos covered bats. It's like pretty ridiculous stuff. I know, you know, flooding and hurricanes and things like that back east have always been an issue. You know, obviously the earthquake was pretty crazy here, which affected some of our properties. Yeah. So yeah, we had the Gordon building that the whole back just like collapsed out. Those are more of our horror stories operationally.
Talk about the shift that's happened politically, and it sounds like hand in hand with being pro or against development.
Yeah.
I'm sure you talk to people all over the country, go to some sort of convention with other developers or something. Is that a trend that's happening nationwide, or do you think it's just more local to here?
I mean, I think development went on pause nationwide because of macroeconomic challenges, like cost of supplies and materials, interest rates shooting up, right? So that's going to kill a lot of development. I would say California, and then particularly our area, is become a lot more against development than other areas. I mean, there are areas where you can go, even locally. I mean, if you go to Sacramento, they're not going to have as much of an issue. But if you're in Napa, if you're in Marin County, if you're in some of these, San Francisco, some of these places, it's very difficult. So it does vary. You always have growth markets. Like there's always places where they welcome development, the community's not against it, and it's needed and it's viable. But I would say, things have paused for a few years nationwide.
Yep.
I think they will come back in certain areas. I don't think that you're going to see a lot here, even if the politics are receptive to it. I just think the underlying economics don't support it, as evidenced by projects that actually are approved that have never been built, right? And that's an economic challenge. Yeah, there's just the drivers are not there to underwrite the project.
How do you get involved with the other side? And other side being more local government and going from private to public in a sense.
Like when I was a commissioner?
Yeah.
That gave me an opportunity to be on the public side, to learn the public side of it, to learn a different perspective, and to bring the real estate developer mind to the commission, which is necessary, I think. There was some opposition. I remember at the time, people say this is the wolf guarding the hen house. It's a conflict of interest or whatever. But it never was. I wanted to again help shape my community in the best way possible the way that I thought it should be. It was more of a yes before no, as opposed to I think now it's a little bit no before yes. And when I say yes, I mean, when a project came to me on the planning commission, it had been vetted by staff. It had been vetted by environmental experts, water experts. Okay. Like there were a lot of no's that they had to go through and tweaks and changes to even get to our board, right? So it wasn't like, oh, just sign up for your project and go, it was, now we would criticize them, we would critique them, we would poke holes, we would do all those things. But at the end of the day, they checked the boxes technically and legally with staff to get to be in front of us.
Yeah.
So I was always going in with an open mind of, okay, let's see if I can be convinced sort of not to approve this rather than the other way around. Mm-hmm. Was a bit of my approach, but I never made a decision before hearing the presentation and talking with my fellow board members and everything like that. I just always had more of a glass half full outlook to it. Mm-hmm. And so it was very helpful to be on the government side of things, working with the staff and a good friend, Alfredo Pedroza, was supervisor who had actually approached me about the opportunity. And so, getting to work with all of them in that capacity was very good. It was a good perspective.
Is the thing that really interests you to just really see the other side of it?
Yeah, definitely. And again, I had a seat at the table, another seat at the table, right? Yeah. So I was like, this is a good opportunity. And most of the development that we were doing was basically in the city. Mm-hmm. And so the planning commission position was the county. Oh. So while the city's within the county, it's two different worlds, right? Yeah. And so the county, everything I did for the county was mostly winery focused and winery related. I wasn't dealing with proposals for 200 unit apartment buildings in the county. It's not what the county does. It gave me exposure to the wine industry, vineyards, land use in the agricultural sense, which was different than what I was doing. So I was learning a lot there. Okay. Yeah.
So it's just interesting to learn about the...
Yeah, most people are not on both sides like that. Yeah. Actively at the same time.
So Napa Valley and chicken fingers. We're not talking about Wingstop. So yeah. Chick-fil-A, Raising Cane's. Could you talk about that situation, kind of how it unfolded?
Yeah, it was a pretty unfortunate situation, and it's probably where I would be most critical. That was a moment in time that shifted a lot for me and for Todd. We had, through just a lot of work and somewhat miraculously, had figured out that there was a project on Soskel that was a retail project, and there was a drive-through, and everything had been sort of figured out for what was going to be Chick-fil-A, and then people were very upset about Chick-fil-A's politics and I think religious views and everything. And so they had moved Chick-fil-A out, and then it became Raising Cane's. And so there was a drive-through for Raising Cane's, and it was all part of the project. The whole project was kind of designed around this drive-through. Everything seemed fine. Everything was fine. We had figured out was we were going to redevelop Kohl's downtown, and we had a project going, but Kohl's was a tenant. They were occupied. They served the community. A lot of people didn't want to leave town. They didn't want to leave town, right? So we was like, okay, well, how do we figure this out? So we had put together a deal and Kohl's was going to relocate from downtown to this project on Soskel where the drive-thru was and everything. They were going to be in a smaller, more efficient, newer, better store. It was going to create more revenue. It was going to be better for the community, better served. It made all the sense in the world, right? And so what we had was a plan, a deal where Kohl's was going to relocate from downtown Napa to this new site on Soskel. It was a better fit. The location was better. It was easier for people to get in and out. It was going to be a new state-of-the-art store. It was going to be the size that they typically do. They would generate more sales and activity. I mean, it was a positive win across the board. And what it did is it took a tenant that really wasn't a good fit downtown out of downtown, but then you could take down that fortress of a building that cuts connectivity and really hinders the growth of downtown. And you could unlock downtown's potential by taking that out and doing a much better project. So we had everything lined up. It was a great plan. And so, but it was contingent on the Soskel development, right? For them to relocate. We knew that at some point Kohl's would not operate here anymore. It was just, the sales were not doing well. It wasn't a great Kohl's experience.
Yeah.
And the building was way too big for them. So we were like, this will keep Kohl's in the market. And Kohl's is a good retailer to have in the market because they have a lot of just lower priced items and things that people need, right? So they serve a certain demographic here. So basically what had happened was they were going in for approval and everything was good. A lot of times you don't really go in without completely knowing what's going to happen. I mean, you're working with everybody to understand where they are on the project. So they went in, there was a group of environmentalists that came in and they were protesting the drive-through at Raising Cane's and saying that it was promoting driving and like all those people there and the emissions, all this stuff. And there was no science being talked about from there was nothing like that. I can appreciate that people are protective of the environment and the world, and it has nothing to do with that. But where I had the challenge was environmental studies, the experts had said that there was not a negative impact. However, this group said, well, there must be. And so what happened is they sort of got this momentum and they were in the room and the room changed. And all of a sudden, the city decided that they were going to take a stand for the environment in this one moment.
Yeah.
We're talking about like a zero impact, a drive-through, right? And all of a sudden, they're now denying it based on what real grounds? I mean, there's other than emotion, which is not what you're supposed to do here. And so they ended up denying it. Not only did it screw up that whole project, but now again, you're denying a food provider for a certain demographic, and everyone complains that everything's so expensive here, right? So then you have somebody coming in to provide a non-expensive option for people, convenience, all this stuff. And the same people who are advocating for that are actually killing this, right? So they're sort of talking out of both sides of the mouth. So, they all pat themselves on the back, good for them or whatever. Well, what ended up happening is that project fell apart. And that group was, I think, so frustrated. I think they gave up on it. The project fell apart. Kohl's ended up not moving. This is not the kind of environment that you can develop it. And this is crazy. We ended up selling the project to somebody else who wanted to go down that road. And, I know those guys, they're great. They got a great idea. They got a great plan. They got the stomach for it. I, at that point, said, I don't have the stomach for this.
Yeah.
I cannot have my, $200 million projects contingent on these types of things. And everyone's changing their mind for no reason, right? So fast forward now, it was announced last week that Kohl's is closing 40 stores across the country.
Yeah.
Napa's closing. No relocation. They're out of the market. So people now don't have that option. All that sales tax revenue now does not go to the city. We're not keeping that. There's no project there. There's no project there. Would all these things have happened if they approved the drive-through? I can't say for sure. I don't know. But that was a major shift and an example of a small, loud group causing a government to make a decision that they think is isolated to one item, but actually has a ripple effect through the community and the market. So that was the last story that I had about development before I said, well,
that was they say the straw that broke the camel's back or whatever.
Yeah. For me personally.
For you, yeah.
For me personally, yeah. It was I just was like, you gotta be kidding me. And that stuff happens all over the place because not a lot of people don't want to take the time at 7, 8 o'clock at night to go to a city council hearing and express their opinion.
Yeah.
So, but that group did, those people did, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are. Kohl's shut down last week. Exactly what we knew was going to happen. And no project over there now.
Well, let's talk about something a little bit more on the up. Napa Valley Car Club.
Something faster, yeah.
Yeah, something faster.
Yeah.
So talk to me about it. Like, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so the idea, I approached my partners and said, I think that there's an opportunity to do something cool and unique and different in Napa. And, we were all car guys, all loved cars, and figuring out how do we underwrite our car habit here. I had seen exotic car rental companies in Miami and Vegas, some of these other places. And they're not viable everywhere, but I thought, okay, well, Napa is scenic. There actually is an opportunity to drive. There is an affordability, like people can afford these things. And it's a pretty cool experience. In the greater Bay Area, we have, a lot of people who might want to do something like that. We had sold some properties. I had cashed out some deals. I had done well enough to pursue something like this. And so we ended up buying our first car, which was the red Ferrari right behind us, right? Quintessential red and tan Ferrari. Yeah. We launched the company, sort of just soft launched it.
Yeah. What year are we in, or like how long ago was
this? This is April of 2023.
Okay.
All of a sudden, we had one car, and then we had 2, 3, like we just started growing the fleet because the demand was up. And then as we got into that, we realized that there was actually pretty big demand for group and corporate experiences. And that's when that really took the company off. And we started doing private rallies, and we do something called the Airstrip Challenge, where you drive as fast as you can down a private airstrip. It's safe, it's adrenaline, there's friendly competition, all these things. So we started developing and curating this like full experience program that was more than just renting the car for the day. All the while striking partnerships with Stanley Ranch, Auberge, Four Seasons, Carneros, like all these different hotels, right?
Yeah, nice hotels.
Nice hotels, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Four Seasons just launched with us called the Napa Valley Dream Drive, where you get picked up in like a Bentley or a Rolls or a luxury SUV at Four Seasons. They bring you down to the secret car barn. You come in, you go shopping, you pick out your car, and then you go on like a 50-mile tour. Full experience, all that, come back here, relax, have a drink, and get taken back to your resort. Things like that. So creating these really unique experiences for people. And so as the company was taking off, we thought, okay, we need a physical location. We need a home, right? We were just doing this out of our garage. Yeah. And like when people say like, Microsoft, these companies start out of the garage, like, yeah, we started literally out of our garage. Like I would be sitting there with 6 exotic cars in my driveway and just like
inside and outside, covers on, all this stuff, throwing some at my partner's houses, or like one of my partner's grandparents' house. We were using their like garage. I mean, just whatever we could figure out and making
do.
it happen.
Yeah, it was just crazy, right? Yeah. And we're mobilizing all these cars all around the valley. It was nuts. So we needed a home. A good friend of mine owns this building. He said, it's available. Came in and we were like, this is perfect, right? What we wanted to do is we wanted to create an environment where then we could have members hang out here and access it, because the cars are so beautiful, and it's like they should be doing something for us when they're not even being driven. So that's why we got this place. We created workspace, we created lounge space, we have a bar, it's an event space you can rent out. We operate our company out of here. We do all these sorts of things. And this was just the perfect spot. And so we've kept it sort of, secretive and unmarked from the outside. You think you're at an abandoned building.
That's why I asked you where this was. I was like,
no one. I mean, it's in the middle of downtown, but no one knows what the hell it is. Yeah. And then you walk in and you're surrounded by millions of dollars of cars. You're on the river. There's activity, there's music. I mean, it's a cool vibe. Yeah. And so that was kind of the vision. And why we named it Napa Valley Car Club in the first place is there was a long-term vision of actually creating a club And what I really like about this place and what we've done is we have a lot of members who are not car fanatics. You don't have to be a car fanatic to get value and enjoy the Napa Valley Car Club. Cars are the backdrop. And if you want, members get member rates on everything, but cars are the backdrop. It's just a very cool, inspiring, fun environment to be in. That was what we set out to achieve. Yeah.
I think you guys have done it.
It's been going very well so far. We're pretty thankful for all the support from friends, community, people supporting the vision of the membership and joining and everything. Yeah, it's been incredible support. And we have, pretty big plans. And we also we launched Napa Valley Car Weekend. We partnered with the Palm event out of Palm Beach, Florida, which is a successful show down there. And we created the Napa event. And so that's a 3-day car festival in Napa. The first time, anything like this has ever been created. And so we just went for it.
Yeah, you guys moved fast. I mean, you did that, within a year or so?
Pretty much, yeah. We pretty much in 2024 did all of that. Again, like I said, big plans, but we're drinking out of a fire hose right now, just with like everything that's going on. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
So kind of like backtracking, and I guess speaking to Napa like more broadly, there's a downturn in the wine industry where not as many people are coming, not as many people are drinking wine, and there's all this talk on what are other things that can bring people to Napa.
Yeah.
Do you think this can be one of those things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's I think a big partial reason why we've been so well received is people are looking for something different. And we do not take away from the food and wine industry. We complement it.
I agree.
Especially because a lot of these events we end at wineries, we end at restaurants, we take the cars away, they go have fun, they go drink, all these things. So we're working and we're doing rallies with wineries, we're doing partnerships with restaurants, all these sorts of things, right? So, we are very complementary to the industry, but I do think that there is I think most people cannot drink wine all day, every day. It's just not, they just, for health reasons, for a number of reasons, just a lot. So they are looking for different options. And what we want to do is we want to say, like, instead of coming to Napa for 1 day and wine taste, you can come for 2 or 3 days because you can wine taste, you can eat, you can also do experiences like us. You can do hot air balloons, you can do all these sorts of things. We are more than just food and wine. However, at our core, what we do best is food and wine. So that is something great. And the resort partners, they love it. The wineries love it because when they show up after doing all the driving, they're feeling good, they're feeling fancy, adrenaline's high, they buy tons of wine. They're
ready to swipe.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like, they just spend an hour driving a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. They get there, they're like, yeah, we'll give you the, so we are diversifying Napa's offerings. And I think that Bay Area people go up to Napa, to the barn, and to the Napa Valley Car Club and go cruise in a Ferrari or Lamborghini or something like that is like a day experience. Yeah. It's a cool experience. We are drawing people in, and we're drawing car community people in, and our show is drawing people in, and so we're doing our part, I think.
And then, like, as a business, like, what do you guys offer? So you guys offer rentals, you guys offer experiences, and it sounds like a membership here as well.
We offer pure rental, which is I want a Ferrari for the day, right?
Yeah.
We offer a membership, which is I want member access to this building. Our members use this building as though it's their own, so it's like their own kind of car barn. They can use the cars at member rates. They can host clients. They can bring friends. They can have birthday parties. They can have corporate events here, you name it. So that is something that we have. And then we have our experiences, which we call Rally in the Valley, which is our private rally experience where we, bomb around Napa or the coast or whatever. You get to drive different cars, all this experience. Our airstrip event, like I said, you drag race down the airstrip, drive full adrenaline, drive fast. Food, drinks, all that stuff out there, and then a racetrack at Sonoma where you can actually hit the track in the cars. Yeah. Okay. So those are the experiences that we put together, and then, like I said, the Napa Valley Dream Drive, which is a very white glove experience where you get picked up at your resort in a Bentley, a luxury SUV, a Rolls Royce. You get brought to this car barn. You walk around. You pick a car. You go out on a tour, drive that car, experience, see Napa, come back, have a drink, and then go on, back to your resort or whatever. So, everybody looks for experiences. So we've created a bunch of experiences around these cars. The one great thing about these cars is that seeing them is an experience in itself. Yeah. That is something where, you see a bottle of wine, you see, certain things. That's not really an experience. You want to consume it. For us, seeing the cars is an experience in itself, and then seeing them all together is even more, right? So that's one interesting thing about cars.
And you'd mentioned, and I think outside of the podcast, or maybe I'd watch another interview, was that you didn't expect it to grow so fast.
No.
So what do you think's helped it? You guys have, I don't want to say right place, right time, because you guys are doing good things, right? But just all these things coming together where people are like, this is cool. Yeah. This fits in. Like, we want to do this.
We're a hardworking, well-connected group of partners. So we have put in a lot of time. I feel like I worked, like almost every day for like, a year and a half, basically. I mean, we put in the time and the effort. We showed up to events. We leveraged relationships. We called people. We created partnerships. We spent a lot of hours behind the wheel, a lot of, all that. It was a combination of really like putting in the time and effort with a unique opportunity that the market was ready for. It's not a tough sell. Right.
I agree.
And everybody knows what a Lamborghini is. Everybody knows what a Ferrari. They understand it because those companies have been marketing it for years. I mean, it's like ingrained in society, right? So we don't have to market or pitch what the product is. All we have to do is create awareness. So it's a different marketing strategy. So all we did was create awareness, and then the product could sell itself. Yeah. Right. I think that was a big part of success, but nothing replaces hard work. I mean, it's been a lot of work to get here for sure.
And did you guys have a vision when you guys started the car club? Did you have that idea that we don't really have to sell the idea of come drive a Ferrari because it sells itself? Or is it just something like, let's buy cars and let's just figure it out?
There was definitely some strategy behind it, but I also think we weren't totally sure if the market was going to receive it. So it really was like, let's come up with a brand, a concept, a system, a lot of legal docs, a lot of insurance, all that stuff. But then we went through it all and we're like, let's buy a car and see what happens. And then, I think the goal was to say, okay, well, let's at least buy like half a dozen and see what happens, right? Yeah. And then pretty quickly we knew we had something. Okay. Yeah. And then it just, from there,
took off. What are your future plans then? And maybe you don't want to show everything or tell everything, but you guys obviously have this beautiful space now. It sounds like you're renting the cars is no problem. You're building all these partners with lots of more hotels to partner with as well. Right. It's like, how do you guys see the future?
Yeah, so there's only so many exotic car rental days or experience days like in a market, right? So we couldn't just say, let's go buy 20 more cars. Like it wouldn't absorb it, right? Yeah. So I think what we now are working on is we're working on a lot of more approachable experiences. So a 30-minute drive, or the airstrip event we are now launching every month. We're going to do a ticketed, open to the public airstrip event where people can go in and they can do 1 run or 3 runs or whatever. So we are now looking to sort of expand into creating the experience for more people, not just the person who can afford $1,500 a day for it, right? So that's how we can expand. We could also expand into looking at maybe some cool but more approachable vehicles, like for example, a Jeep Wrangler, right? So get a really cool, tricked out, cool color, whatever it is. People can blow the top off. They can put their luggage in it. You can fit 4 people. Now the cost is split amongst 4 people instead of 2 or 1 couple, 2 couples. So looking at potentially doing that. And then it's been so well received that there are definitely thoughts of, should we go into another market next potentially and take what we've done here? There are companies that do exotic car rentals. There are car clubs. There are storage places. There are event spaces. There are all these things, but no one has really sort of combined them. I think that's what makes us unique. And I won't say no one because I'm sure so, but typically they kind of just stay in their lane. If we can replicate this and build a good enough brand and replicate it and go to another market and create all those partnerships and experiences, it has to be very specific markets, but that's how we could expand. The other thing that I've been interested in is just expanding transportation. So looking at, new interesting ways of transportation, looking at elevated transportation, things like that, since we're already in the transportation business, even though we do it differently. So those would probably be some of the future ideas. But right now we're very focused on growing the brand and really growing the membership and the club experience for our members. That's what 2025 is. Be very focused on that.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice in the car club business, real estate development, really as a professional, like what would it be?
I mean, there's the off the shelf ones of like, work hard, be passionate, whatever. But honestly, I think the one thing that I personally struggle with that I would go back and say is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. Because I think that myself and a lot of people are very afraid of failure just because of embarrassment, of like your self-worth, of all these reasons, right? I remember sort of growing up and there were a lot of things that kind of came to me naturally. I developed a little bit of sort of, I'm used to winning and I liked it, but then I wouldn't push myself to the next level where I could start losing and then build up to winning. I just stayed in my, I'll just, win here. It kind of created this fear of failure. And there was a little bit of like a facade of constantly winning. And when I say winning, I don't mean like necessarily a track race or whatever it is. Just, I would say in my early to mid 20s is when I started pushing myself and experienced failures. And then got used to the feeling and realized that they were all just learning experiences and that there was no way that you could be successful without taking risk and failing along the way. Like no one's ever just going to win, right? I would say the number one thing to people and like what you're doing with your stuff is just don't be afraid, just go for it. And if you fail, you learned a lot and it was fine, and never be afraid, because I think that's the biggest hindrance for people. Is they're afraid to give it a shot. And, this could have failed. I mean, this could have failed and been a huge embarrassment. Like, it's totally possible, right? I mean, like, these idiots went out and tried to buy a bunch of cars and they lost a bunch of money and all they wanted to do was screw around. It was not serious. Like, it's a joke, like it could have been a failure for sure. But we never had that mentality and we weren't afraid if that did happen. Okay, we tried it. What did you try today? What did you do? Kind of thing. So that would be the number one advice.
And do you think you carry that now, you as a person, that you're just not scared to try things or to fail?
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to be an idiot. I don't like to fail, but I see it as a growth opportunity, not like a black eye. You have to have that mentality to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there's just no way around it. So if this business, whether it works out long-term or not, or we decide to, a new venture or whatever, I'm going to go into it saying I may succeed. I think I'll succeed. I might fail, but I'm not afraid. Therefore, that's not going to stop me to go forward and give it a shot, essentially.
Any last comments for our audience, entrepreneurs, cars enthusiasts, obviously to come visit you, but other than that?
Come visit us at the barn, Napa Valley Car Club. Tell your friends. It's a cool experience. Take one of our cars out. Come to one of our airstrip events. Book your private route, anything like that. I promise you will not be disappointed. It is worth every dollar.
All right, beautiful.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Thanks for having me. Definitely.
All right, for all you guys tuning into every week's show, please subscribe and like. It helps grow the channel, helps me to keep meeting cool people and bring you their stories. But until next time, peace.